evening, good afternoon, and good morning. I'm Frozen Melon, and today we're going to do some more over-analyzing stuff, and we're going to do the mutators, as it has been pointed out to me by one of you guys that it's probably a very good idea for me to go through these, as they do kind of make a bigger difference into the later descent stages and everything else as well. Most of them will have scaling effects, so it's always something to be aware of. You always have like the 1, the 2, and the 3. So we're just going to go through them all, say what I think about them, and depending on how long the video is, we'll also look at enemies as well, because I believe this is kind of like a good thing to be like, oh, how do you deal with this kind of scenario, and those sort of things as well, because sometimes you can have like really good builds that just get destroyed, or enemies that you kind of maybe want to watch out for in some ways. Is not like actually watch out for, but know when you might end up struggling against them in particular builds, because it's just nice to know. So, mutators, let's start off. Our first one, accelerated change. When entering the first 3 tiles, choose a tier 1 mutator. Now this is have the upgraded version to go the tier 2 mutator. I have picked this up in a few runs, and I think one of them we actually picked up the accelerated change, and it's absolutely fine because it's like a high costing thing on the 6. This is actually worth picking up, and so is this one as well, because essentially you're gonna get the extra bonuses to be able to get the things that you want from it, plus also be able to pick other mutators that maybe are a little bit less, or have a little bit less of a detriment. It does also still allow for the basically the payment system, or call it this, for the mutators themselves. So with that mechanic is you take a benefit to take a higher level mutator, which basically will counteract it. So you take benefits, they minus, you get the plus as well. It's all really cool things to think about, and especially on like Descent 9, you really are thinking about, can I take stuff to get an extra use out of it? If I have uploaded it already for the Azar run I've done, then you'll kind of see how powerful that can be, because it pretty much gave me the win from the get-go because I got a really good spell. So it's one of those sort of things where I think this is actually pretty good, and can actually pad out some of the extra things. Does mean you got to choose the mutators, but to be honest, with the 3 that you're going to be picking, get 2 rerolls on those as well, and they're low costing ones. You can probably get stuff that doesn't really matter. It's a really good thing to think about. But now we can go through the rest of them that actually will what you'll get from these eventually. So, adaptation. Enemies start with 1 power per boss defeated. I think this is really good to pick up. Especially early game, it doesn't do anything on both of these, and late game you hopefully should have scaled long enough to the point where it doesn't actually matter if they've got the extra power anyway, because you're thinking like late game you're only really going to give them at least like 4 power with the bosses defeated in most cases for like normal enemies, so it's not actually that much, and there are things that will give that straight off the bat. So yeah, I think these are quite good. My personal preference is always the 6, because the 2 just doesn't really give you that much for the cost. This should probably be like a 3 cost in some cases if it's going to go and buy this, but hey ho, you know, balancing stuff, things like that. Next up, Anithma. My pronunciation is terrible. When losing health from an enemy attack, also receive Vex. Now, I'm not a fan of this. The Vex can actually be useful. It's not bad of a detriment. The problem is you lose it every single time, so you could have like lots of Vex if you do take a lot of damage. This includes damage due to yourself as well, so it's something you want to watch out for. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's not something you want to take, but there are worse ones to take if you can defend yourself and not have to worry about the health loss. The main thing on this is like, do I take enough damage to lose health? And if you do, then probably don't pick this up. If you don't, and you're already defending quite well, then maybe this actually might be the build for you to pick up, and you might have some good fun with it. Moving along, the Arduous. When entering a boss battle, choose a tier 1 mutator. This is really good value. This is also really good value, and this is also really good value. Admittedly, like, early game is the way you'll be taking this, not late game or stuff like that as well, because you're going to have issues on that. But then again, like, after you've taken, like, the first boss out and you see the new mutators to pick up, these are just really good value, because it equals the same thing you're going to be picking up anyway, so it's just free real estate, and you're basically delaying the bad stuff coming near you. So it's the exact same process on these, and it's one of the reasons why, if I get the option to see them, I may pick them up, or I may not. But early game, it might be a bit of a detriment. Late game, But you never know. You can kind of work around it. And yeah, free cost is free cost, so. Moving on enemy death, receive 1 curse. I don't mind these. I think they're pretty useful. The cool thing about it is if you've got ways to roll, you can kind of remove the curse, and curse can also be advantageous to yourself as well. So it's not really that much of a detriment, it's just too much curse is a problem. And I know a lot of characters have ways to reroll die and stuff like that. My issue is there are fights with enemies that will give you curse quite quickly and quite easily, at which point 3 and 4 die, suddenly you roll lots of 1s. Or you roll terribly and curse applies itself to the other die, not the one that rolled first, because I noticed that mechanic happening quite a lot, where you then get, say, roll 2 1s, a 6 and a 5, and then that 6 becomes a 1 again, and now you got 3 1s and a 5, which is just terrible. But, you know, that's my own personal experience and bad luck that sometimes happens. But yeah, I think these are pretty good to pick up, probably more into the late game than the early game, because you can kind of work around it, and just don't plan to stack too much curse is my only sort of very wariness of that as well. That's why Baneful is probably worse than just having this normal Baneful. The Baneful Plus is more, you know, is less good as such. Moving along though, Bolstered. I think this is absolutely fine. Normal enemies have 15 max health and so on and so forth. I will probably pick most of these up if I see them in most cases. I just rarely see them, or at least in most runs I've had. I haven't won with them yet so you can see that. But just giving stuff more health, in my opinion, isn't much of an issue. Just because if I'm going to kill them, I'm going to kill them anyway, and them just having a lot more extra health. I think the 60% is a little bit too much. The 30 and the 15 is fine, in my opinion. But yeah, this 60 is quite a lot, even if it is just doubled again. It's kind of not worth it with the amount of time you'll probably have to invest to kind of kill the stuff. But yeah, I think they're worth picking up in most cases. The lower ones kind of give that extra bit of use on stuff and things like that as well. But they can be, if your build doesn't have enough DPS output, yeah, you're going to be in for a slog with these, and you may get outscaled if you're against scaling enemies, so watch out for that. Moving along though, Cataclysm. End of turn 8, take 30 damage, and then you have end of turn 6 and end of turn 5. Now, I'm going to say, I don't think this is a bad pickup. The issue with it is you've got to be able to either end the fight before the end of turn 5, the best case you pick the higher one up, or you've got to be able to block on that turn. Remember, once it's happened, so you're all good at that point. But yeah, if you can like set up enough block to block this plus anything else, late game you might have a good opportunity to get around it. Early game though, probably not worth it, because you are going to probably take that damage on repeat quite quickly. Maybe like turn 5, probably not so much, but I guarantee you I probably got to turn 5 on average quite a lot in some of the late game stuff, and I will be taking 30 damage consistently, so that's my only worry about it. This one is more on just like my personal feeling than experience with them, because I tend to avoid stuff like this just because I have a feeling that I will end up punishing myself with them if I take them. And between that, because you take a good amount of like max health reduction stuff anyway, and like healing reduction, you tend to kind of get punished even more by something like this. But that's probably just my playstyle more than it is anything else I'm moaning about on that one. Moving on, Clumsy. Okay. So I have picked up Clumsy quite a lot just to like lose a die on a turn, and I think it's one of those ones where if you can like counteract the dice loss effect with like an extra die anyway, then it's fine. If you can't, then I'd avoid picking it up, and that's just pretty much my simple effect on there. So like Lapis with the extra roll, as well as Azar's got the extra roll for like a 1, 2, or 3. I think that's fine. You can probably pick these up and be not much of an issue if you've got those extra rolls early or on the turns that you want them. Other than that, yeah, basically taking a fumble is not great in my opinion, but you know, could be worse in most cases, and it does help up. I think these probably should cost a little bit more, but that's just me being a baby about it. Moving along. Start a battle, receive a curse. Yes. I picked these up in many different ways. In my opinion, the Condemnation 2 is the worst one out the lot, as you see I haven't won with it. Just because 2 curse at the start of battle is an absolute nightmare. 1 curse you can deal with, and curse every turn is absolutely fine. But imagine this said receive 3 curse at the start of a battle. Like, essentially the progression would be the same, and then you wouldn't end up taking it, and that's how punishing 2 curse kind of is. It just means like if you pick this up early, you get really punished by it. And again, it's the same reason why I think this can be quite bad unless you get some ways to remove it or finish the fight beforehand. But yeah, other than that, it's you're probably going for like the bigger one anyway, and you can use curse to your advantage. Essentially, this can be classed as a buff because of the curse and the way it works. But yeah, I always just watch out on if you can use the one or not is really the question. Like, I know I've got a few comments on the videos and stuff about like how good curse is, how you can get like duplication of ones and things like that as well. My only question on that is, yes, it's great, and the extra die is always really brilliant, but any extra die is better than just a 1. Right? And that's what you're weighing up against. Like, if you need to take something, take it. It's great. It can work for you, and there are benefits to it. My other issue, more or less, when it comes down to it, is you've got to be able to take advantage of the downside to make it worth more than you think it does, which I might get punished for that thought process in higher descent levels, and I'm not going to deny that I won't, but I think it's still probably something I will do until I hit the wall with it. And I've learned a lot about this game from you guys, so I do appreciate all the things you do say as well. You know, essentially it's keeping me in my lane when I need to be kept in my lane, because I do stupid things quite a lot. But hey ho, if I can turn around and win a Descent 13 at some point using sticks to annoy you all, I will do it. And you'll all look at me like, man, this guy gets lucky as hell. I'm like, yes I do, yes I do. But anyway, Deadly, I like Deadly. At least the first level of it, just giving like everyone +1 power in normal battles, and even Deadly 2 and Deadly 3 aren't that bad, but you can see what I mean when I said about just giving 3 or 4 power immediately is kind of like, yeah, there's such a difference, and this is why this is just better to take instead of stuff like this. Between that, there are multi-hit enemies that deal quite a lot of damage in the first like few stages in like the third and second zone, so it's something to watch out for with these. That's why I probably won't pick them up as much, and I get punished when I do take the harder ones anyway, so you can kind of see where my playstyle ends up landing. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth thinking about. If you can defend quite well and you've got ways to get around it or kill stuff early quickly, then maybe you should be good. But yeah, power scaling is a worry in most cases. Moving along, Decrepit. Now, I'm surprised I picked this one up, because I would have picked this one up and then picked like this one up, and yeah. If you've got enough defense, sap isn't bad. I think Decrepit 3 is probably the limit of where I'd end up taking it, because receiving in each turn with sap 2 is quite a big detriment in your scaling of defense. Like, so on average, I would say probably I end up maybe spending probably like 3 or 2 defense spells in the early game in certain turns, which means that you end up losing like 6 to 4 defense, which can be counteracted in some ways, but in other ways is like, it just means that you, like, if you get like sap stacking from enemies, which enemies can do, good luck defending for the turn. Good luck defending for the turn, that's all I'm going to say. But I don't know how that's going to work with sort of later descents. Like, do you need to be more offensive to make sure that this isn't an issue, in which point it becomes more valuable, right? Like, if stuff's going to kill me and one-shot me anyway, defending doesn't make a difference, so I can just take this and get extra value for taking it, right? And that's sort of the logic behind it, is if I can't defend anyway, there's no downside. And that's kind of the way that I end up thinking about taking these, is, yeah, either I stack enough defense where this doesn't make a difference, or I don't stack any defense, in which case it doesn't make any difference, and it's trying to minimize the bad side of these as much as possible. Moving along, Dice Rot. I don't think this is that bad, right? Like, this one is fine to pick up, like, each turn, fine. Each turn going up to 4 is kind of a bit terrible, but even then, like, basically you're getting a free 1 or 2 every single turn. a guarantee, which actually is pretty good if you can get ways to kind of work around that, right? So I definitely think it's actually kind of worth the pickup if you've got ways to get around it. But I definitely think the dice rock one for that just extra little bit is kind of like, actually, yeah, like seeing an extra plus side. You know, maybe getting a free potion, extra gold, extra HP, stuff like that. Like, this is actually pretty good. This one, maybe not so much, depending on how you want to think about it. But definitely worth thinking about. Definitely worth thinking about to get the extra bits to maybe give you those sort of free stuff. And I think that's what it is. It's like, is it worth the free stuff you're going to give up for it? I think there is, man, I used the same symbol there twice. That's terrible. Moving along, though. Diminishment. Every second turn, -1 charge to all spells. I think this is fine. In essence, if you've got a bunch of spells with lots of charges on them anyway, I think you're going to be fine. If you require them to always be able to be used, and you're using them twice or 3 times anyway, then there might be a bit of a problem. My more worry about this is, like, there are combo issues with other sort of detrimental effects to you, which could become problems later. So, yeah, always just be aware of that as well. But and if you've got spells only like 1 offensive use, or 1 use out of them for the charges, then yeah, you've got a bit of a problem with this every second turn. But there are ways to get charges back, so, you know, think about that if you already are doing that sort of build anyway. Moving along. Dulling. Now, I have picked up Dulling quite a lot. I have probably picked up like the bigger ones and the small ones quite enough, and I think it's mainly due to my playstyle. I don't tend to do lots of little hits, I tend to do 1 big hit, and that's why I end up picking them up. In my opinion, are they really worth it for like a reduction? Probably not, but depending on what I'm looking at to try and reach that sort of mutator goal, I might end up taking them just to fill it out, or getting maybe like a free bonus, depending on if it's worth it. And again, that's what I'm doing here, is losing 10 attack on every attack spell I use, worth the upside of me picking the extra bonus that I get, is basically where I think about it. But definitely worth to think about, because like if you're doing 1 big hit, then you don't really care about the downside. And again, it's like counteracting that and kind of getting a ways around it. And with all of these, it's like, can I reduce this downside as much as possible? And that's kind of the plan I end up thinking about. It's like, can I just basically make sure it doesn't matter? Echo Snare. This, in my opinion, is just terrible. I don't like it. I think suppressed being applied to you directly is a terrible thing. It's a horrible mechanic in the sense, because all it means is the fact that... So, put it this way. My argument is the same way I would argue that the silence die is a well-designed mechanic. This is the opposite side of it. Suppress just works on the next cast, so I can't counteract it, and I cannot play against it. I just have to play, and it takes up a die. So essentially what it's saying is, you will receive 1 fumble and cannot play a spell if you decide not to use the fumble, right? That's kind of the downside of it. Preferably, I would like to get something more better than this, so I tend to avoid them. Same with this on each turn as well. I think the downside of it is just too great, because it basically means just every turn receive a fumble, or just don't cast a spell, and eventually you can't cast any spells unless you continually spend die into it. If you have die generation, great, probably not so bad. You can use 1s and low cost die, or low value. I guess saying value is weird, but dice that you're not able to use efficiently in these things. But yeah, I just don't think they're worth picking up because the way they work. I'd rather pick up a silence every turn and stuff, because I can choose not to use it, and yeah, it locks me out for a turn rather than maybe a few turns or extra die and stuff. Elusive Foes. This is absolutely fine as like a little bit extra. Like, once it's gone, it's gone. It's a one-time use, so it's actually definitely worth a pick up to get some extra bonuses. I think there's no issue with this. Just simple as. Moving along, enemies start with tenacity. I think it's the same issue with this. Like, it doesn't seem that bad, and if you've got like constant damage, eventually you'll get through it anyway, so it's not much of an issue. It's just some enemies do stack a lot of armor, and then you might be in trouble with that if they have like the other armor gain stuff that you give them as well. So just be aware of that. If you're already giving them armor, probably don't pick this up, because you could basically have an enemy with a lot of armor, and that did happen to me in a run you guys never saw. But yeah, my DPS just wasn't strong enough if the armor didn't disappear. It was not worth it that way. So evolving elites. When entering elites, get mutators. Again, this is really good, in my opinion. This one probably not so much, just because like by the time you've hit 2 elites, you've got a problem. In most cases, you're hitting an elite like every fight. So doing 2 elites in this plus 3 is actually a really good upside later, and you can always choose to avoid elites if you don't think you can actually defeat them anyway. So there are some plus and round sides to it. I think it depends on what you're trying to do, but I think receiving like a 6 worth of modifiers for the cost of 5 at all level 2 is, or tier 2, is absolutely fine in comparison, because of the effects are so less detrimental, right? And we've already seen some of those where it's just like, yeah, certain ones, the low cost one is better than the medium cost one, and the high cost one is still pretty good, or like vice versa and stuff. So yeah, it depends on sort of what you roll, and the extra rolling is absolutely fine. So you can kind of curate the ones you want to pick up. Okay, fatigued. Now, I don't like these, like, at all. I know it only happens once, right? The reason why I don't like them is that just delaying the turn of when you can't gain any block basically isn't as fair as you think it is, right? Because what you end up doing is you allow... So, especially like late game and stuff like that, a lot of enemies have some form of scaling to them. So the longer the fight goes on, the more damage they deal, or they'll deal more damage per turn by the amount you cast spells, like Frenzy, Growth, all these sort of stuff, or just genuinely getting a power every turn, which either you can give them yourself as well. The issue with Fatigued is the later in the turn order this is, the more damage you're going to take. So like Fatigue 5 probably isn't as bad as, say, just the normal Fatigued, right? The Fatigue Triple Plus is probably a better one to pick up than this one because of that logic. The other issue with it as well is picking something up that just doesn't allow me to do something for a turn is a very annoying thing. So essentially what you've got here is like all the sap and curse and things like that I can pick up, I can play around very efficiently, or I can build and design something with that in mind. Not gaining defense for a turn is not something I can build and play around. It's a horrible thing to pick up, and I probably would avoid picking it just because of that. Once the turn is over, absolutely fine. Hence why I say Fatigue 3 is, or the Fatigued plus 3 plus? 3 pluses? The Tri-Plus is probably the best one out the lot to pick up, and I probably wouldn't pick up any other ones because of the same logic that I just went through on there. Is scaling is an issue, and ruining an entire build design is essentially like... Basically, if I am a defense build and I rely on getting defense every turn and then letting the enemies hit me for damage, I've just ruined my build by picking this up, because turn 3 I can't gain anything, which means every third turn I'm gonna take damage, and then 6, and turn 6 I would take even more damage, because theoretically it would have scaled more. So yeah, it's a bit of an issue. You know, a little bit of a moan about that, just because I think like it's poorly designed as sort of a mechanic, right? It'd be betterly designed if it was, say, like on turn 5 reduce your block by half, you know, before you take damage or something, or you know, stuff like that. Like, that's more of a way you can play around it a little bit, because you can still gain some block. Still punishing as hell, but still a bit better, in my opinion anyway. Final gift. On enemy death, all allies gain undying. I don't think this is a bad pickup, right? In most cases, you're only going to be hitting one enemy per turn, but there are certain fights where this will be absolutely terrible. We have seen those, and I've kind of basically showcased them quite well on where it's like, if you kind of get really unlucky, you may never finish a fight because a Mirage dies before the actual main boss every time. But yeah, other than that, I don't think it's that bad of an idea. In most cases, you are going to be like killing one thing per turn rather than all of it at once. So it's just something to think about. Plus, the hands for Braxis can be a bit of an issue as well. So watch out for that. Start battle, activate a sap trap. Now, my issue with this is kind of like the same issue that I've got with like these, except this is far worse because more than likely, I will say it now, I will roll that sap repeatedly and consistently, and I will have like 20 sap by the time that I finish rolling on a turn. I just will. I got bad luck, and I will hit that every single time, and there's no way to stop it from happening. So it's kind of like, yeah, right? And like you think, I probably would say on average, depending on how many die you have, you're probably going to hit this at least twice per turn. With rolls and stuff, probably even more, you know. Statistically speaking, that's probably less than that if you actually work the math out, but I'm just saying, like, that's my problem with it, is the fact that I know I will hit this repeatedly every single turn, and then eventually I may not be able to block. You can get your block before this effect happens, after the first dice roll, but by that point, you might have already got too much sap to do anything. And that's the issue, there's no way to plan around it or have consistency. You'll see that this a lot with stuff, is I like fixed costs that I can kind of define and play around with. Interaction is key, right? And that's what I like about games, so they give you the ability to interact with stuff more than probably just saying, oh, here's some random dice rolls and have a go. The randomness is already in the dice roll. I don't need to have randomness on top of that as well. But yeah, punish me when I have no control is a bit of a low blow, essentially. Moving along though. Frantic. I love these ones. I probably pick these up quite a lot. Probably more than I should do, although the late ones I probably don't pick up as much, just because, as you see here, every second turn an enemy gains 4 power. That's quite a lot of power for them to gain and stuff, but I think there are places for it. It's just, yeah, if you've got like one enemy, you're going to give them 4 power, or basically 2 power every turn, which can be a bit of a problem. So basically watch out for them, but I think there is a use case to pick them up, but I probably only pick up the lower cost one just because at that point it doesn't really matter as much. At least in my opinion, you know. A bit weird to think about. Moving along further, I have picked this up every single time, or whenever I picked it up, I've always had a bad time with it. Frenzy is such a horrible ability to be put on certain enemies, and between that, it also, as the other moment, as we've noticed, so it has a bit of a glitch with itself as well, when things kind of like target themselves, because the way that targeting works with the rage effect, I think, as well, and other stuff like that. So there is some weird thing because your target spell basically targets them to gain the fury based upon the fact they have frenzy. Weird, I know, but apparently that's going to be fixed at some point. That's still fine, but because the scaling on this is so bad, if you play a lot of spells, I think it's probably not really worth the pick up at any point, because yeah, you can just get one shot and anything that's double hits. Like, even in the last few games I played, we've had this issue appear a few times where they start gaining fury and they didn't even have frenzy, they just gained it through a different way, which we'll probably see in a bit. Again, the damage trap. The problem with this, again, in my opinion, is the fact that it's just kind of like, oh, you're just going to start taking random bits of chip damage every time you roll. Probably a little bit better than anything else. So this is like a 3 cost, well, this is a 4 cost, and you can see the benefit of this versus the disadvantage of that quite quickly. But again, yeah, it's probably a better one to pick up if you need to. Just, yeah, the traps are a bit of a nightmare to deal with, in my opinion. On ritual cast, receive a fumble. Pick this up if you don't have a ritual. Simple as. It is really good in that case. Between that, depending on what rituals you have, it can also work to your advantage in that way as well. Because, you know, it's still probably worth the loss of a die for the next turn, in a way, right? So yeah, I think this is actually a pretty good pickup. You know, Hypnotic, on utility spell, cast, receive a sap. So you can see, like, this and this are put at the same level. And I guarantee you I'm getting like 3 or 4 sap from this every single turn. Good thing about this is you can just get the defense first, right? So that is the other thing. And it's actually pretty good in that sense. So I think it's definitely worth a pickup on this because you have some level of control over it, and that's really important. So yeah, I think this is absolutely fine, and I think it's probably worth a pickup if you can like make sure you play around it. I'm an idiot, and I tend not to, but I think it's worth that. Moving along, every third turn, a random enemy gains a critical. I think this is fine. I think you can work around the 5 on there. The 6 is probably not as great because essentially you've dropped everything by a third just to increase this by 1. This is the best one to go for. Don't take this. I think you get punished by it quite quickly. Right? Just because there's some enemies that tend to like have a delay turn versus an offensive turn, and then you've got issues on that front as to where things are going. But yeah, definitely worth thinking about picking this one up. Moving along, health reduction for the health gained. Now, I'm going to nitpick a little bit because I want to nitpick a little bit. I'm going to nitpick because of the fact that is this on health gained or health healed? 2 different mechanics. And if you're saying that like there's a difference on that, the word heal is used here. This is just gained. Coincidence? I think not. Just part of the mechanic and the wording is my own niggle bit about this. I think they're brilliant to pick up, and you should pick them up every single time because the reduction is kind of like irrelevant if you just like heal in fights or stuff like that. The regen and stuff is also one of those things that's good to pick up, but still. Wording is important, keeping consistency. This is just someone that likes to moan about everything this is coming from more than anything else. But yeah, they're definitely worth a pickup. And the wording is off, but this does reduce health gain and healing outside of battle. The wording is important. Jinx. Enemies targeting your spells hit an additional hit one additional spell. I think this is fine. Right? Admittedly, there are some real downsides to this, and like you can get out of hand quite quickly, depending on the boss you face and stuff like that. But if you know you got a boss that isn't targeting spells, then it's probably worth a pickup early game. And I think that's one thing you got to do is like look at the field and see what the boss you're facing is to kind of like work around some of these downside effects. But yeah, I kind of like this. I think it's interesting. And in some cases, can actually be a bonus. Anyway. Last act. I like these two just because the fact that if you don't kill stuff in your first turn, which as you go into later descents you tend not to because of just you don't have the DPS output to kill stuff with extra health and things, this is well worth it. Later maybe is kind of irrelevant, higher descents and stuff, but they're definitely worth a pickup to get you an extra item and things like that as well. So yeah, I kind of like these. Moving along, when entering a portal, lose 1 spell. I think these are absolutely fine. You can stockpile enough spells to the point that you can lose them without any trouble. I think picking up these early is a bit of an issue, but picking up later is absolutely fine. Just because that first port you go through, you're probably going to be disenchanting a couple of spells. And my other question is, if this says lose 2 spells, am I still disenchanting them, or am I just tossing them because there are mechanics that require clarification on the disenchanting stuff, right? But just something to always think about with that. The wording is, again, the thing that just makes me think how does mechanics work and stuff, but it's kind of very interesting to know. Moving along though, Major Vex. Every 7th die becomes a Vex die. I don't mind these, actually. I tend to always pick these up just on the low end stuff because they don't really cost much, and sometimes getting a 1 or stuff is actually kind of nice. If that happens on every 5th, means you can guarantee it in some cases, in particular turns and stuff. The 4th and the 5th one are a bit more punishing, but again, I don't mind them. Again, Vex I treat like Curse a little bit, so it's not that bad. Plus, I still keep the value of the original die that gets the effect on. So, and the fact that it only attacks the highest cost die also means I can kind of play around it a little bit as well by playing it last if necessary. So, I like the Vex mechanic and probably give a little bit less appreciation to it as much as I did before. Just because certain things seem punishing. But yeah, moving along though. Milady. End of turn, take 1 damage per charge left on spells. I think this is fine. Right? I've avoided taking it in many different situations because I'm a coward. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the design of this is absolutely fine. In most cases, I think you're probably going to take anywhere between 0 and 5 damage at most. Early game, it's probably a bit of an issue. Late game, probably not so much if you've got like die generation and rolling and stuff internally within your spells. But other than that, there are a good amount of fights where I literally do just end up spending everything. So it's kind of interesting. And because like there are mechanics that require spell charges to be lost as well and things like that, then yeah. I think this is absolutely fine, and I think it's definitely worth a pickup, even though if I haven't done it myself. I always pick up the regeneration stuff, because again, my opponents having more health doesn't bother me, in most cases, because I either plan to one-shot them or deal big enough damage where this doesn't really add up anyway. If you're a low damage build and stuff, probably don't pick this up, because it is quite a lot of health gain if you hit them first, because that is like the first 6 turns on this one, or the first 4 turns on this one, they're going to gain some health back, so damage doesn't really matter, which in most cases you're looking at 9 for this one, and you're looking at 21 for this. So yeah, just watch out for that. Basically, that's the extra health they get. Mana leakage. Each turn, +1 to a random countdown spell. Now, I think these are actually pretty good with the Khazar and stuff, and actually pretty good to pick up as downsides. Also, the other thing as well is, like, if you've got like really good spells that you can just end up casting, I think the Mana Leakage 4 is a bit of a bad one, because the jump in it isn't worth the cost. But definitely these two are worth to pick up like an extra kind of item or things like that as well. The main thing is the lose 2 health thing. I'm not too sure if that hits the armor. I don't think it does. I think it just hits you directly, which actually can kind of work out with certain mechanics and stuff if that's the case, so which case it's even better than I think it is. 2 and 1 are fine. 5 though is a little bit too much, just for the effect that you get from it. Mighty bosses. I always pick these up if I get the chance, just because I don't really see a downside to it. Never actually seen that one, but yeah, because I believe like boss fights are meant to be boss fights anyway, so making them stronger does not really seem that much of an issue to me to get extra value out of it. But yes, I can see why they might be a problem sometimes, right? Sometimes. Especially like if they got multiple enemies and stuff, and the hands and things with Imbraxis, and yeah, something to watch out for. Moving along though, we have then the elite version of this, and again, I always pick these up because elites are elites, and them just starting with extra power doesn't really matter when they scale it anyway in most cases. As long as I can defend for that first couple of turns to get myself set up, I'm probably in a good position. These things are the ones I probably pick up where they probably would ruin my run quite a lot. So yeah, just always have a good think about them. Miscast. I think this is fine. I honestly think this is fine. Because you can kind of get away with this not mattering, right? And this is the stuff where I turn around, and I think I've mentioned it in another video or in passing as well, which I might as well mention here. What I like about these sort of things is the limitation of when stuff makes you go a particular play style rather than punishing you for going a play style, right? So this makes me think about and puts a detriment on a particular type of spell in a way, rather than punishing me across the board for everything. Right? Imagine if everything, regardless of its X cost, so basically just had a reduction of 1. So countdown, stuff like that, they all lost a 1. Every other value that went in basically meant that if I had to put a 5 in there, and I had to put a 6 in there, and all that sort of stuff as well, right? That'd be terrible, but this is worded in a way that makes it more interesting and allows you to play around with it a little bit better. And that's what I like, interaction. So yeah, I think this is well worth a pickup if you aren't really getting a downside. Moving on, every third battle has no spell rewards. I picked this up a few times. I think it's actually kind of interesting. The issue I've got with it is the fact that early game it can be a bit of a problem, and like the spell rewards could be really important in particular fights, because if it lands on a boss fight you got a problem. So just work out your routes before you take this is my main thing. Right. Moving along, the Bartered Fate. I think these are actually pretty good. Right? There are times where you can't go into a shop, and that is absolutely fine. Right? I do think that these should be worded the same way the other ones are as well. So on this one, it should be whenever you go into a shop, you receive a 1 mutator, and this one should be a 2-1, in my opinion. Just saying, because it's the same way that everything else seems to work. It just seems to want to punish you more going into shops for no apparent reason when you can get stuff for free, right? Like, it's even more punishing. Like, the other ones seem to be a bit more lax because you're doing a fight. I'm like, well, that's, you know, consistency is the thing I'm moaning about there more than anything else as well, right? Because all this means, basically, if I go to one shop, I've already kind of hit the limits, and I'm like, well, that just seems pretty terrible. But anyway, moving along. Bleed out. Each turn, receive rupture to the turn number. Don't take this. At least my playstyle that revolves around me scaling and doing everything else as well. You will hurt yourself a lot more with this than you think you will. And I think it's a very detrimental pickup, bleed out. If there was like maybe other versions of this that are slightly different, maybe it's worth it, but then there's no point picking this up. I think in longer fights you'll have issues, and if you try to defend and set up and stuff, then you've got problems there as well. Moving along though. Take 3 damage when collecting gold. This is interesting. I wish there was more to this. I think there are as well, I shan't pick them up. But yeah, as far as things go, when we have this, yeah, absolutely fine. You can choose to not pick up gold, right? You can choose to not pick up gold, right? That is the main thing about it, and I kind of like that idea. I guess some of these are actually all down here as well, but we'll look at all those also. Burnout. Every 20 spells cast, instantly end the turn. Again, I am not a fan of this. Just because of the fact that if I end up doing this, we're going to have issues. Just simple as. Irrelevant of what it is, forcing me to end the turn, a particular thing. It reminds me of... is it Time Weaver from Slay the Spire? My god, I think it is, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, but that damn time slug. Because it forces you to end a turn in a particular way that's very forceful that you can't really counteract, then yeah, it's kind of very awkward. If it was something that was like, you can only cast so many spells per turn, that's a more interesting mechanic. That means you can kind of play around it. This one, not so much, because there may be a point where you land on, this turn, you get to cast 1 spell. That is it. But yeah, if it's like 20 spells per turn, I can play around with that. That means I can't go full combo stuff, but interesting, right? I think that needs to be redesigned in my opinion, but that's just me, again, moaning and stuff, so. Moving on, Endless Wounds. For every tile entered, start a battle with 1 wounded, resets an entering sanctuary. This is kind of interesting. I don't think this is bad. And Azar can pretty much use these quite well with the health loss and stuff, so there is that side of things. So he can really kind of take full advantage of it. The issue I've got is that, like, after a while, yeah, like, every die will be wounded for you. So you got to look for sanctuaries to make sure that you kind of reset these if you're able to. But interesting. I like the mechanic. I think it's probably like an optimum amount that you want to receive. But eventually, like, if every die is wounded, what does it matter, right? Then wounded becomes nothing to you. So, yeah, just thinking about that. And there's probably some really cool mechanics you can do when every die is a wound die as such. But it does reset before boss fights, which is actually kind of fine, I guess, as well. So think about this. Probably a lot better than I'm probably saying it is. For every 20 spells rolled, destroy a die. We have used these quite well, and Azar loves this if you're going a dice destruction build. Other ones, if you got a lot of sort of die generation, stuff like that, will like these as well. I think they're kind of undervalued in regards to what they do, but because you can make this into an upside in some cases, yeah, I think it's absolutely fine. I don't see any problem with these, and I think they're worth a pickup if you can use the dice destruction. And Azar can do it pretty well. So yeah, and you have other ways to generate die as well, that's the other thing. Gotta remember that. Otherwise you'll just have a hard time in certain turns. Moving along, enemies deal double damage when on full health. I think this is fine. I picked this up a few times. I misunderstood it for a little bit because I thought it was when I was at full health they deal double damage to me, but no, it's basically, yeah. They deal the double damage when they're at full health, so if you can like chip away at them for the first turn, everyone gains poison for the first turn, those sort of like effects and things like that, you get triggered, then suddenly they're not doing double damage and there's no downside. So yeah, pretty cool. I like picking this up. Retribution. I have picked these up a few times. In my opinion, the Retribution effect is kind of really annoying, because when they die you just get lots of wounds, which can actually be a bit of a bad thing plus a good thing. So yeah, I think like this is really undervalued for what it is, and I even would say this is as well, because you kill something you get 2 wounds, which means they get 2 wound die next turn, which basically can mean in some cases that you just don't gain any armor because the fact that you have to take the hit, right? The 1 and the 2 probably not too bad, but the more expensive one kind of is, right? Moving along now, Shrouded Foes. Enemies start with Nullify. I picked this up. It's absolutely fine. Don't see a problem with it. As long as you're not applying afflictions in, like, immediate ways to kind of, like, really matter, I think it's absolutely fine. If you're doing, like, scaling stuff, then again, it doesn't matter either, which we had a really good run to kind of showcase that last with Azar. Afflictions only really matter if they are not scaling and when you're required in bulk. So if I'm applying something immediately at like 20 stacks, then I just don't get the 20 stacks. But apply 1 stack here, 1 stack there, 1 stack here, 1 stack there, absolutely fine. Completely nullifies the Nullify itself, which is hilarious to think about. The Smoldering. I think this is terrible. This is fine, right? Just because the amount of damage you do, and if it lands on the wrong spell in a particular turn, it's pretty much game over. That's my only worry about it. But other than that, I think they're fine to pick up. I've just really gone off Ignite because it's been scaled so much more to be more punishing than useful. So, yeah, I'm being a baby about it. But I think there are ways to make this work, and you can kind of focus around it if you've got multiple defense options and stuff. And, yeah. I would probably, like, prefer it if it was, like each turn the first spell you cast gains Ignite. At least you can kind of have more interaction with it rather than just being like, this spell now deals 4 damage to you. Yeah. When entering Sanctuary, lose 1 spell. Again, I don't mind these. You can play around them. This is great for just doubling the effects. You basically get extra bonuses. So I think these are pretty good if you've got ways to kind of gain spells. Plus the fact that technically you do gain that spell back if you don't want to heal, which in sort of the health reduction ones I pick up, that ends up happening quite a lot for me anyway, just because it's the best option. Moving along though, Observe. So I have picked this up a few different times, and this is the other one that is like, the Fury gain is probably really bad. I said before about the fervor on this, which is always absolutely terrible because on the second turn a random enemy gains Frenzy. You can kill that Frenzy thing off once they get it. That's absolutely fine. You can target it. The problem is it's random, and you might have offloaded your damage the first turn onto the wrong one, and you can't kill them the second turn. This, though, is kind of like, every time I defend myself, I'm going to give you more bonuses, and yeah, multi-hit stuff can really work their way through that, and yeah, the cool thing about this is, which was nice for clarification, which you guys let me know, was the fact that the setup for the standard spell doesn't change what the attachments are to them. So spells that gain the ability to gain defense on an upgrade bypass this completely. So that's pretty cool. So it's not on defense gain, it's on a defense spell cast, which is kind of nice. So there are ways to get around it as well, which I was like, actually that is really kind of cool, and it's nice to know that sort of stuff because it allows that level of interaction that you're not normally aware of, which can help you just eke out that extra bit of value when you really need to. Moving along though, I love Obstacle. I think it's probably one of the best designed ones where it's just like, yeah, gain a bunch of armor, have it. That's why I said, please don't give them the tenacity if you pick these up, because it will hurt you later, so just be aware. Other than that, pretty interesting. Overpowered. Enemies start with +5 max life per upgraded spell. I think this is fine. Take it, because it's just an extra 2 for an extra item. Think about that way. Lose 1 max life when gaining and collecting a spell. I think these are absolutely brilliant. Pick these up as well. You should be able to gain life back if you don't have the life gain reduction stuff, so well worth the pickup. I don't like traps. Traps are terrible. Even the Rupture Trap is kind of terrible, though you can kind of play around this a little bit easier than compared to the two, because you can plan to defend, essentially, which is kind of nice. You know, you will still take the damage from everything. It amplifies all damage. I think it's better than the sap one, but there are options on that as well, in my opinion. I'm probably being a bit biased towards sap. I think it's really annoying to deal with. Every 6 dice spent, receive 1 rupture. And then we've got the upgraded versions. I think these are fine. I think just like rolling die and receiving rupture on repeat. If you're doing a lot of rolling, you've got issues. But if you're not, then it's absolutely fine to pick these up. It's just, yeah, don't do it with Lapis and start rolling lots of die because... Oh no, spent is spent. Oh man, I'm not reading properly. Yeah, so like spending die is a bit of an issue, but yeah. I don't think these are bad. You can defend around it a little bit and kind of plan around that. Although the 5 is probably a little bit more harder to deal with. Move along, start a battle. An enemy gains Emulate. This is fine. You can kind of play around this and just not deal most things. You're only probably doing 1 hit per turn. That is fine. Every second turn, this is where I'm kind of saying is just a bit terrible, right? I have picked those up and stuff and used them. Even this one as well. Pyromaniac Plus. So I have got wins with these. But it's the fact that it's like every turn or every second turn. Right? So like, in my opinion, this and this are exactly the same thing. Right? It's just that it gets spread more often. This is actually pretty good to pick up because it is just like better than this in every single way. But then this is kind of really annoying to deal with. So I'm kind of like, eh. But yeah, if you're only hitting them once, it makes a difference. I probably think, because it goes to ignite, I probably turned around and looked at this negatively in a way that I probably shouldn't have done. And I don't think it's that bad, especially when I do go like defense builds with 1 big hit, right? But the emulate stuff and how frenzy works is a bit of a bug, so hopefully they'll fix that, because that was very annoying for me to deal with. Because they gain Fury, and when they gain Fury, it triggers Emulate, and then, yeah, just a random spell somehow then gets applied with that sort of thing. But yeah, anyway, moving along. Rally Call. Turn 5. All enemies gain 4 power. I don't mind this, because it's just a one-off. The issue I have with it is, like, well, that's quite a lot of power. But like I said before, you pick up stuff early game, which will give that anyway, right? So it's kind of like choose your battles wisely in this thing, which one are you picking up? And they kind of, they swap with each other. It's just the issue with this is it hurts you earlier rather than later if you pick it up too early. Then you have Reverberation. Start a battle. Enemy gains Spell Mirror. The nice thing about this is Spell Mirror is until end of turn. If this stayed around, it'd be a nightmare. But I think this is fine, right? Because it's start a battle effect. Even if it was like once per turn, I think that's probably where the line I would probably end up drawing, because it means something has permanent Spell Mirror, which is a nightmare to go around. And if there are upgrades to have that happen once per turn, avoid it like the plague. Avoid it like the plague. Just because in certain boss fights, you basically, if you've got targeted spells, you are taking damage. You can play around it a little bit by targeting something where it just redirects it back at you and does no damage, but yeah, if you scale and stuff, you've got problems, so bear that in mind. -1 item choices. We picked this up before. We got the -2 as well. I quite like these. Just because in some cases, if you're already set up, it's free real estate. You can pick these up and not have to worry. If you're not set up, it just limits your ability to do so, and there are ways to kind of gain that back with the extra bonuses and the artifacts we saw in the previous videos of these overanalyzing series. So yeah. Shiver. Apply fade to the first spell depleted. If you don't deplete spells, that is fine. If you do, you basically get silenced on it, which is not great. Just pointing that out. Moving along. I think it's fine. If you've got ways to play around it, that's brilliant, and I prefer that with the silence as well. It basically adds the extra effect. So if you don't deplete stuff, you're all good, and if you have to, then you know you haven't got it for next turn. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. Moving along though, enemies start with 4 shade armor. Lots of little hits are a problem with this. One big hit is fine. I think Skulk is interesting as a mechanic and probably worth the pickup in some cases. The issue with shade armor, in my opinion, is the fact that it keeps scaling on health loss, which is kind of annoying. But there are ways to get around it, so don't worry about it if you've got a build that does exploit it not mattering. Moving along, Spell Break. Every second turn applies Broken to a random spell. Again, my issue with this is it applies it directly, and I got no way to get around it. And then it basically goes, oh, by the way, now spend an extra die. We looked at this before with, where are you? Suppress, where it just basically goes, oh yeah, just have suppression to apply broken when you choose. Now I get it applied to me without cause, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, that seems great. I really kind of appreciated of that, you know? So, yeah, in my opinion, not great, and I'm not a fan of it either, and I probably won't end up picking them up. Unless I got lots of die generation and stuff. The issue is the randomness is what I'm not a fan of either. Consistency is always an issue. And ways to play around it as well, right? Moving along, enemies start with thorns. Again, I don't mind this. If you've got a build that doesn't really care about thorns, pick these up. If you've got a build that does care about thorns, don't bother. You'll do quite a lot of damage to yourself, as we have seen in some of my previous runs and stuff from other descents and stuff like that. Once I start scaling thorns on it myself, I'm a nightmare to behold. So yeah, start doing multi-hits and taking yourself like 12 damage. It's going to be a real horrible thing, your multi-hit builds. But if you're doing one big hit, you can play around it, so... The issue is enemies, so everything starts with it. So, I think wording on that is a bit annoying. Again, with stuff like this as well. Because there are ones where it's like, start a battle, enemies gain, I think. But yeah, that's just me nitpicking on stuff. Moving along. Stifle. I don't mind this. I think this is fine. The idea that start battle, one spell gets muted is absolutely fine. 2, though, is a bit of an issue, and 3 is a personal nightmare. By the way, I do not know when I managed to pick up this mutator and I managed to win with this in my entire opinion, but I've managed to do it, and I do not know how I did that, but I have done it. But yeah, I think this is so punishing that you get a muted applied to the spells immediately, and it's, yeah. Oh no, it's 3 muted on a random spell. Okay, that's why. Okay, I was reading that wrong. So yeah, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So basically one spell means you can't use it for like 2 turns or 3 turns. So yeah, I think that's fine. That's not an issue. So yeah, they're actually worth a pickup. It's just making sure that you don't have just one spell you're relying on to cast. Or if you are relying on it, it's something that you've got to set up for. Yeah. Moving along. During boss battles, enemies have 10% max HP. I like the stout bosses. It's absolutely fine. I pick this up every single time because boss fights. So them having extra HP doesn't make a difference if I'm setting up to kill them anyway. So yeah, worthwhile. And Elite's the same, basically the same logic behind it. I picked these up because the fact that I don't really care about their health totals. I care about being able to just eventually take them out. And if I can already do that anyway, them having more health, if I'm already defending, is absolutely fine. Start battle of activated weak trap. I say this is probably the best one of the traps to have because you can just have a build that doesn't require you to deal damage in doing attacks, right? and I think that's absolutely fine. The rest of the other ones, you require to have defense. Like, just straight up, you have to defend yourself in some way or shape or form by gaining defense. Other builds that apply weak, yes, but not every character has access to be able to do that. Weak trap, so every character has a way to deal passive damage, which is basically damage that does not require you to attack. This is why this is actually pretty good, and I think in some cases it's probably one of the best traps to actually pick up. So bear that in mind if your build kind of benefits from it. Moving along. End of turn, take 3 damage, or every third turn, and second turn, third, that. So my argument with this is kind of on the idea of like, is the damage something I can plan around? If yes, then great. I would say this one, taking 20 damage every third turn, is worse than taking 10 damage every second turn. I don't know why these are this way around, but the more damage in one turn means you got to defend more if you can't already defend yourself, right? So just taking damage more often isn't that bad if you can consistently defend, but taking more damage every other so often is far worse, because it means on a certain turn you basically can't defend against everything. And that's the problem if you get really horrible rolls and setups. But yeah, I don't think these are bad. I think they're interesting. And if you've got a build that can kind of always has 10 extra block or stuff like that, then like Tempest 8 is well worth the pickup. And there's literally an item artifact that will give you that setup anyway. So bear that in mind. Moving along, Threshold. Okay, so Threshold is anti my playstyle, like 100%, and I've actually won with one of the higher versions of it, so that's kind of cool. If you do multi-hits that don't do much damage, then this is great. If you do big hits, deal a lot of damage, then there's a problem. And that's my only kind of thing about that, is if you want to stockpile lots of power, then one-shot something you can't really do. If you want to do like a couple of big hits here, there, and everywhere, then you can't do that because Threshold will limit that down to 25 damage per hit, which is a bit of a problem. So yeah, and this includes, by the looks of it, everything. So things like poison, stuff like that, all those sort of things. Essentially, if you've got a build that does little bits all over the place, probably great. Otherwise, yeah, then I don't think they're that good, in my opinion. This is something where it's like, I think it's probably nice to have clarification on, is if I have 50 poison on something, do they still lose 50 health, or will they lose 12 health? If they lose 12 health, I'm not happy about it, because at that point, is poison health loss or damage? And that would be my argument, is that sort of level of clarification on the effects and stuff and things like that as well, is like, I think this should just be reduced damage from spells, and I think that should be okay. It still does the same thing, but allows you to kind of have a play style you can get around it with. And again, it gives you more interaction with the game. That's just me only nitpicking. But other than that, I probably would avoid picking these up unless your build kind of doesn't really care about them. And I don't think there's any build that doesn't care about them. That's kind of my only worry. But yeah, we did manage to do it. Took me a while, but still did it. Moving along, Tithe. On spellcast, lose 1 gold, and if unable, lose 1 health. If you're stockpiling gold and you don't really care, absolutely fine. I think you'll be poor by the end of it, so you need to be gaining gold from somewhere. But I don't think this is badly designed, and you can also just lose health for it as well, which works with Azar quite well on health loss builds. So there's even a benefit to pick this up. So yeah, think about it. I think it's worthwhile. Moving along though, the Torpor, which end of turn apply broken to a random spell if any unspent dice. I like this. I think it's really good. It's well designed. It's kind of annoying in a way because you have to spend all your dice and not have this, but if you don't do it, you get the broken applied, so you kind of get double hit by not being able to spend all the die and then getting a broken applied to run a spell. But I like this. It's an interesting mechanic, gives you outplay potential and stuff like that, and I think it's actually worth a pickup, although its cost is probably not worth you, but you never know. I think it's actually pretty good. You might get an extra item out of it for free. Unrelenting Foes. This is fine. This one is kind of annoying to deal with, but I don't think it's bad either. But it can be in certain fights be really horrible to deal with, so just bear that in mind as well. But I think it's really interesting, and I kind of like the mechanic of it. So yeah. Moving along though, unwieldiness. I think all these dice reduction mechanics and stuff are pretty horrible. Right? Mainly because of the fact that it just limits your dice straight away. So you basically get 1/3 of the dice max. Now, if you don't have those anyway, it's not much of an issue, but there are a lot of spells and stuff where you do roll extra die while you still have them, which means that you just don't get to keep them. I completely agree that maybe the max dice limit you can do gets limited or stuff like that, but because you can't increase your max dice limit, decreasing it is terrible. And is kind of a big detriment. 8 and 6 probably not so much, probably doesn't matter that much, but going into 5 and 4, that's a big issue, because like 4 is the limit of where you're kind of like, well, if I just get 1 + 1 die, I've reached my limit already. No, I can't generate any more. Can you get around it? Yeah, you can spend the die before you try and generate other die. That's completely simple and a great way, but my simple monkey brain won't allow me to do that, and that's why I kind of moan about them. And I think it's something where it's uninteractable. Yeah, I don't think it's an issue regards to you picking it up, and it makes the game very difficult in some ways. But in my place, I would like to probably end up having this as more like a challenge run type mutator, right? It's like, oh, you start with this, now you got to try and win with this with just whatever, and then you can keep increasing the difficulty of the game until the point of which you turn around and actually win. So yeah, it's food for thought, right? Every third turn, one random enemy gains Berserk. Yeah, I'm never taking these at any point, Wild Rage. I think they're an absolute nightmare to deal with, and again, the health loss with Berserk is just like, they're gonna lose health, they're gonna gain power, and depending on what my build is, they may gain so much power they one-shot me. If I can kill the thing off before that matters, that's great. If I can't, in boss fights, it's a nightmare, and this is gonna where I'd end up being like, yeah, in a boss fight, this is terrible. Moving along though, accelerated change we've already seen. I still think this is really good to pick up, just regardless. The atrocious, which we've got those there, which we've already seen when entering bosses. Take the 4, this is 7 cost. Catalysm is great as well. We've seen that diminishment every third turn. We've seen that. Frantic, each turn against 2 power. I kind of think that's fine. Absolutely fine picking that up. Further, again, it's all about when random enemy gains Frenzy. Further plus, eh? This immediately gains it. Interesting. And then enemy start, this is terrible, don't pick this up. Milady, I think this is also fine as well. The upgrade, Arcane Drought. Every second battle has no spell rewards. Guess even worse. The Orchestry, spells recharge no more than 1 charge at each turn. This is an interesting mechanic, and I like this. Is it worth picking up? I think it's an absolutely terrible thing to pick up, but I like the idea of it, the fact that you can only get 1 charge per turn, and then you can kind of stockpile them to use when you need to. Very interesting mechanic, like the idea of it. Are you probably going to pick this up? Probably not so much, but yeah, it makes the game interesting, right? Like, definitely good for like a challenge run or stuff like that, where you can make some sort of custom stuff, and I think that's what we may do with stuff like these, is just make custom runs to see like, can we win the game with these effects on from the get-go with like no other bonuses or stuff. Take 1 damage when collecting gold. We already seen that before. I think it's absolutely fine to pick up. Burnout, we've seen as well. We've got the burnout upgrades, which are kind of like, I'm never a fan of them anyway, because it will land on a turn you hate regardless. Crippling Kuros. Lose 1 max health when collecting an artifact. Yes, pick these up. Like, losing max life to gain an artifact is absolutely fine in my opinion. It's well worth the cost effectiveness, and you don't even need to gain, so you can just see what they are and see if it's worth it. Moving along though, Endless Wounds we've seen there, the Entropy Grip we've seen as well. Mandate of Madness, when targeting enemies, must target enemy with the most health. Now, again, I like this effect. Is it probably too cheap for what it is? Yes, because it forces an entire mechanic for you to be like, no, you must do this, which can kind of be a bit of a pain. But I like the idea of it, and again, it's kind of coming up with some interesting challenge runs as well. Moving along, the Smoldering we've seen before. Withered, roll 1 less die each turn. I think this is fine. Like, it literally is part of the game mechanics, and you can counteract this by getting more die back. That's why I like the bonuses of it. Overpowered, we've seen. Penance, we've also seen, which again is absolutely worth it. The Protrusion Plus, we've seen. This is absolutely terrible because you're going to get real lot of Rupture for this. Again, Shiver, we've seen. Stat Boss is always worth a pickup if you do see it. Toxic Mana. This works in one particular situation, and one particular situation only. That's with Lapis, if you've got that sort of toxic, the poison transfer spell. Because you just gain all of that poison on yourself, and then apply it to someone else. And I would love to set a custom run up with this battle effect in mind. Yeah? Well, you get that spell as a start. You get to apply poison, and you just gotta win the game with this setup, completely setting up as well. And then Wild Rage, which I think is also very terrible as well. But yeah, that there is all of these when it comes to the mutators. And then we kind of got the boss to go through. I think we'll go through those later as well. I think the enemies are kind of interesting to go through. But yeah, we've done all the mutators, and yeah, I mean, let me know if there's any ones that you think are kind of slightly better, slightly worse than what I said, or have got interesting mechanics you've seen how these interact with stuff, or kind of ideas for maybe some custom runs and stuff like that that'd be really interesting as sort of like a challenge to the community as such. I know I don't interact with the community as much. I probably should do, just because, you know, job, life, usual stuff and things like that as well. But I'd be quite interested in if there are a bunch of you that are kind of like doing challenge runs on this and setting up those sort of particular mutators, because you do have the custom runs. So I could go like Lapis custom run, and like if there's ways that I could kind of like force particular modifiers to be happening on this and get like particular things on that, or if I'm not able to yeah, allow me to put mutators on this and choose which ones I want, is kind of my whole point, right? Allow me to choose the mutators as a starting thing, because that could be really cool if they would let us. So that's a word to the developers, which I would say, let us do that. Let us start with mutators that we want to start with, and then start runs that way as well, because those would be really cool challenge runs if we get to set them all up. Or even make them on the dailies, you know? Like this, yeah. I don't know if you can or not, but yeah, if you can, well, I'll figure it out and we'll have a good time. But anyway, if you do enjoy these videos, do leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.